Welcome to High On Sci Fi, a bi-weekly podcast from Jackraw Productions. The following podcast may contain strong language and adult themes, and as such may not be suitable for younger listeners. If you have any questions, comments, or a specific topic you'd like to hear the panel discuss, or would simply like a shout out, find us on Facebook by searching High On Sci Fi.
Special review episode, Star Wars 8 The Last Jedi, recorded Sunday the 7th of January 2018.
So welcome to High On Sci-Fi and this special edition review episode. And here with me today, not in the studio but all the way over in Swindon, is Helen Payne.
Hi everybody! Hi Stu!
Hello Helen. And I am of course Stu Jackson. Now we need to make clear just first of all that Sean Oxenham isn't with us today. The main reason being he hasn't seen The Last Jedi yet. So he wouldn't be much good for a review. But on top of that, we don't want to give him spoilers. So that, first of all, dear listener, that's the biggest thing we have to say. If you have not seen The Last Jedi yet, if you are avoiding spoilers, switch off now. Go away, watch it, then come back, then listen to this and see if you agree with what we say. But from here on, no more warnings. It is spoiler territory for Star Wars 8, The Last Jedi. So, Helen, gosh,
yes.
Star Wars 8. It's so we're going to talk in a moment about the story first of all, the overall storyline of it. But it's been quite divisive, hasn't it, within the Star Wars fandom community?
Very much so. It's pretty 50-50, I'd say, at the moment. Normally you would get, I would say, more of an opinion on one side than the other. But from what personally I've seen, yeah, very much 50-50.
And do you know what I find fascinating about that is just sort of bringing Star Trek into this a little bit. Discovery is having the exact same effect, and I would say that's about 50-50. With Trekkies, they either love it or they hate it. It's Marmite.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, it's especially with something like Discovery, which is trying to do something new and groundbreaking within an already recognised and beloved genre. Star Wars is actually doing the same thing and is causing, for that very reason, causing a divide. So it's quite interesting at the moment. Yes,
I mean, is it less so with Star Wars because Disney have an established way of doing things, and we're seeing that with the Marvel movies in particular, aren't we?
What you mean, almost like having a set storytelling. What the word would be,
well, I'm thinking
it's
more
a formula, isn't it? I suppose that would be the best way to describe it.
Yes, a formula. Yes, that's a good word to use. So would that be fair to say that kind of it should have been expected?
Well, I would have said yes, but then having seen The Last Jedi and see it do things that really were actually breaking the mold of Disney, as well as breaking the mold of Star Wars itself. No, actually, I don't think they've gone for the tried and tested formula.
Well, I think, it's very formulaic in the sense of, like I say, what we've seen in Marvel recently. So, as an example, not being able to have a serious moment without shoehorning a joke in there. I'm not so much formulaic as in the old-fashioned Disney with the princesses, that sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. This, with The Last Jedi, felt very much like it was building on the Marvel formula, as you say, this not being able to have a serious moment without some form of joke. There's a few examples I can think of just before we get into the big review, such as when Luke is first handed the lightsaber on Up-2, and the moment at which, at the end of The Force Awakens, was a literal cliffhanger, and you're thinking, oh, what's going to happen now? And you're getting really, really excited, and then he throws it over his shoulder.
Yeah, I hated that.
Rubbish.
I hated that.
Yeah, no, I did as well. In fact, I gasped out loud in the cinema, and I could hear people laughing behind me and around me. I could hear people laughing at that, because I suppose on one hand that was a shock, but on the other, the way that he does it is so flippant that it's something that you can laugh at, and it is something that you would find in the Marvel films that have come out of late. Yes,
yeah, absolutely. And it's something I'm not liking. I mean, across the board, not just with The Last Jedi, but with the Marvel films, I'm very much on record of saying I hate the humour that's being crammed into it at the moment.
Yeah.
But anyway, we'll come back on and we'll talk about the humour. So first of all, we need to, I think, first of all, recap the whole story very briefly of Empire Strikes Back. Oh, I'm sorry, The Last Jedi. It's easy to confuse the two because it's a bloody remake, isn't it?
Well, I think there are areas when you start dissecting after you've had time, when you've walked away from the cinema and you've been mulling these thoughts around in your head, and you start to realise that there are some glaring similarities. I mean, I know, for example, the whole beginning scene with the fleeing resistance, who, strangely, can I just say, are referred to again as rebels halfway through The Last Jedi, which was very odd.
Yeah.
Not jarring, just very odd. It's like, well, no, hang on, you're the resistance, so why are you calling yourselves rebels?
It's so they could shoehorn in their whole rebel scum line.
Ah, yes.
That was the sole purpose of it. And I'm using the word shoehorn quite consciously here, because that is how that and numerous other things felt. It's like, we've got to get it in somehow, and I don't care how awkward it is a fit.
Yeah, it is almost like Disney had a checklist, and or Lucasfilm, whoever it was that made that decision, had a checklist of, well, we must put this in there and we must mention that, because that will immediately get the general fan base clapping like seals, with pure delight. So yes, Anyway, moving on. So there were, as I say, there were areas such as the resistance fleeing at the beginning. You had the DJ character. I'm probably jumping ahead, so rein me back in, Stu, if I am. But I'm thinking of these as they're coming to me. You had the DJ character that was the character who was going to offer help to the resistance and then ended up ultimately betraying them, which is the Lando character in Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah, they get sold out by someone they think of as a friend.
Yes, exactly. You've got the lone character training away from everyone else. Rey is training on Up-2 with a supposed Jedi Master. And
I've just got to start you there. I really like the fact you've called him a supposed Jedi Master, because he never completed his own bloody training, did he?
No, exactly. Not that not that there's an academy that exists anymore in the Star Wars universe that would hand him a scroll and say, "Congratulations, Luke Skywalker, you've now officially become Jedi Master."
Well, no, but I mean, going back to Return of the Jedi, he suddenly rocks up after, however long, and just says, "Oh, I'm now a Jedi Master." No, you're not. Who said? Who decided that? What? Just because you wear black and look cool all of a sudden?
Yeah, Luke, we need to talk to you about your leanings here.
How egotistical can you get?
Well, he did get a bit cocky. Yes. He did get a bit cocky. He went from whiny to being cocky. But anyway, we'll talk about Luke because I still love Luke. I still do. But yeah, so and then there are other examples of where say on Empire Strikes Back.
Mm.
But I think perhaps we should mention what the overall story is, and what it's trying to achieve. I mean, do you want to do
well,
that?
I mean, let's. I think it's safe to assume that that anybody listening to this has actually watched it, because if you haven't, well, why would you listen to this? Because you're going to get loads of spoilers. So I think it's safe to say that, yeah, if anybody listening has seen it, so I don't think we need to sort of cover the story. But I think key point, the fact that it does mirror Empire so much, which to my mind, episode 7 married up to episode 4. So I was unsurprised. But what I really didn't expect is the worst bit of Empire Strikes Back to be recreated in it, which is that weird bloody scene. Slap bang in the middle of it.
Was it the cave?
Yeah,
the cave
the cave or tunnel or mirror room or House of Mirrors, whatever the hell it was.
So I've been looking on some forums prior to the release of The Last Jedi, and one of the things that came up in conversation, which was really interesting, was that Rey might fight a creature on Act 2. This came about because of some people that had seen the filming in Ireland had taken some photographs and seen what appeared to be a giant monster. So I thought, this is really good. Rey fighting an indigenous creature. That would be interesting to see. Turns out that creature was the one that Luke was milking on the island.
What was up with that scene?
Oh, I cringed, especially with the monster's face. Or no, not monster. That's their creature. Especially the face, the sort of little turn of the neck to look at Rey as if to say, yeah, this is where it comes from.
Yes. The face that says, you think that's milk.
No. It was nice having a barrier there. Like, there's no barrier anymore. But anyway, so it turns out, as I say, that wasn't the monster we were hoping for. And yeah, basically the test that she had to face on Act 2 was a cave again. And when she went into the cave, she didn't see her parents. She saw herself. Although I will say that since then, I have seen people mentioning what looks like the silhouette of Kylo Ren walking towards the edge of the cave mirror before it's revealed that it's Rey. So, I mean, that could be true, but it could be quite interesting if it is supposed to be his silhouette. But ultimately, regardless of that, it is herself that she sees. And as you say, is exactly the same as Empire when Luke sees himself.
Awful scene. On the battling a monster, could it not be the Rock that she was battling?
Her ultimate test, you mean, or one of the tests?
No, where people have seen bits of the filming and she appears to be battling a monster. I'm thinking of her attacking the Rock.
Yeah, maybe. But there was also some pictures, some scene imagery that appeared on the forum that showed the outline of the monster. I keep calling it a monster. That's not fair. Creature. That Luke gets the milk from. So
monster milk.
Maybe I'm calling it monster because I was so traumatized from that.
We all were. Even me, and I've been round the block a few times. I think basically, I think if you've seen Empire, you've seen this film, but Empire was better. Even if they did have wires nailed to the wall in the ice, this was better.
Well, there were things that this film tried to do differently. I just think it was executed badly, and some of the writing was quite poor in areas. One before I go on to that, one other thing that I noticed that was almost like a continuation, not just of Empire, but of the original trilogy, maybe more leaning towards Return of the Jedi, was at times Rey's use of language towards Kylo Ren. Do you remember in the lift scene as they're going up to Snoke's throne room, and she's telling him about she feels all the conflict within him, and how he keeps saying to her, "Well, you'll turn to the dark side, and I won't go back to the light."
Yes.
That to me felt very much Luke and Vader going to the Emperor scene.
They could have just cut and paste the dialogue.
Yeah, in a way, it did feel like that. So that was another kind of okay, yeah, been there, done that sort of thing. But yeah, some of the things that I felt that he tried to do differently, Rian Johnson, things such as the space chase, the very, very slow crawl.
The one where Admiral What's-Her-Face hid her plans for absolutely no reason whatsoever.
Yeah, I don't see why she couldn't have just said to Poe, "Look, this is what I'm trying to do, so let me get on with it."
Yeah.
That seemed to be, for me, and possibly I think for you, Stu, the only reason that she did that was to eke out some time to give Poe the idea to mutiny, only to then sort of realise that that's what she had in mind all along. And actually his mutiny killed a lot of people, and he didn't really sort of become a leader after that. He kind of succeeded in just retreating, which was kind of disappointing.
Well, I don't know if it was supposed to get the audience sort of on side with Poe. It's like, he's a hero really, and like she's the bad guy, and we're alongside, and we're on side with. But actually, it switched me off to Poe completely. It's like, so you got no respect for authority then. These people have earned their positions, like, because in the Rebel Alliance, I was going to say, in the Resistance, or whatever the hell you want to call it.
That's right, they're calling themselves rebels, so it's fine.
But they're not. I mean, she's not an admiral because she's bought away there. Everyone in there has earned their position. So, for him to be like that is just ridiculous. I think they deliberately got a pretty woman in a glamorous dress to make it look like she's an airhead and didn't know what she was doing.
I don't know. I wouldn't agree with that necessarily. I just think that they needed a reason for Finn to leave the ship so that he could supposedly do something to help. They needed to give Finn a story, effectively, that was what the Canto Bight scene was supposed to be. And I think there's probably an intention for Poe to have some character progression there, where, like you say, he has a disregard for authority that he should then be able to overcome, so that at the end of it, he does realise that, no, that was a stupid action, I shouldn't have done that, and now I can go forward as a good leader. Because let's face it, Leia is not the leader that she once was.
Nope.
That's evident at the end of the film. And Holdo sacrifices herself for the Resistance, so she's now no longer around. So at the end of the film, who's left, basically, to be the leader? Well, that's Poe. So I think the director probably had the intention that there was going to be this great arc for him. He was just executed poorly, and as I say, she was just brought in as fodder for that character arc, because she didn't really have one herself.
Well, the trouble is now I feel that Poe is the last person on the planet who should be leading. He feels so far removed from being a leader to me now because of that scene.
Again, I suppose it depends on how you came out of the film and how you felt. But I think for a lot of people, they feel as though he is the natural choice, and I agree with you. I mean, I don't think either he or Finn really have much else. I don't think there's much else they can do with their characters. I really don't.
Well, no, and I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about Finn in a moment, and why I thought actually he was coming to an end. because he's done his bit. He's in terms of character, the story development, he's done. He's finished.
Yeah.
Unless there's going to be some big reveal in the next episode, I don't know.
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? That's obviously something we're going to chat about, isn't it? What's next for episode 9? But yeah, I mean, one point to make about Holdo, in her defence, is that she had the potential to be something, and I think regardless of her gender or where she came from, her back, because obviously no backstory was explained or anything like that. She did have the potential, and I think it would have been nice to have done something with her, but that never happened. So
I'm very inclined to agree with you on that. I mean, you had one glib statement of, what, she's the hero of da-da-da, or whatever, and that's it. It was like one line, and that's her entire backstory. I wasn't. I wasn't impressed with the whole thing. This was probably coming across quite strongly, I think. That perhaps not the biggest fan at all. So moving on to, I know we wanted to talk about the humour versus the darkness within it, because, of course, Empire, that was cited as being the darkest of the trilogy.
Really?
The original trilogy, yeah, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Empire?
Yeah. Oh, sorry, I thought you meant The Last Jedi. I was going to laugh in your face.
No, Empire was... And we know it was Empire redone. Jar Jar Strikes Back or whatever. So how did you... So obviously you didn't find it very dark then?
No, and I think one of the reasons for that is the what we touched on earlier about the forced humour. I think there were many moments that were basically that could have had the opportunity to be very dark, and were ruined by misplaced humour. I think there was a couple of things stood out for me with regards to Rey. See, now this is an interesting thing about. And I know it sounds as though I'm focusing on her, but there is a good reason for it. One of the reasons why Empire is such a dark chapter in the Star Wars original trilogy is because of the failure that happens within the film. And the one character who is ultimately tested the most is Luke. And you see Luke try to learn the ways of the Force, but he's too impatient, and he's loyal to a fault, so he goes to help his friends rather than to gain all the knowledge that he needs to face Vader. And when he finally does confront Vader, he loses, and he loses badly, as we know. He gets his hands severed, and he ends up at the bottom of Bespin, hanging on for dear life. And that's dark. And fans loved Luke for that. The fact that he failed, and he really, as I say, really failed. Anyway, so come back to The Last Jedi, which is meant to be supposedly dark. And you've got Rey, who really the only thing that bothers her throughout the entire film is that nobody seems to want her. Luke doesn't. Well, it's true.
Sorry. Yes, I've not really thought of it in those terms, and it's very obvious now you're saying it. But I just find that really funny.
Well, Luke obviously doesn't want to know who she is, and the Resistance, I suppose you could argue at the end, they sort of want her around, but she still looks as though she's out of place in the Millennium Falcon at the end of the film, as if she doesn't really belong. And the only person that seems to want to give her the time of day, if you like, is Kylo Ren. But things like things like her being tested ultimately with the Force. She had what you could only assume was a few days, maybe some weeks on up to, if that, and she's suddenly able to master the Force, and she's able to fight with a lightsaber, and she can move rocks.
Hang on, because it was said very clearly Luke was going to give up 1 day's training, and there will be 3 lessons in that day.
Oh yes, he did actually.
So she's had 1 day's training.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Maybe it's because the film generally felt like you'd been sat there a week. I started thinking she'd been there for an extended stay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and again, I mean, comparing to Empire, Empire had that whole montage, training scene with Luke. I mean, as the song says, even Rocky had a montage. And there was nothing like that. It's just like, yes, I'm going to give you 3 lessons, and then you'll be a Jedi Master. What?
Yeah, exactly. Well, the point I'm trying to make, because I'm conscious that I can be long-winded about these things, the point I'm trying to make is that at no time does Rey ultimately fail, and part of that is due to the misplaced humour. When she's doing her training, like the thing like Luke hitting her across the hand with the reed, and other little things that crop up, like the little smile she has with Poe at the end in the Millennium Falcon. You sort of think to yourself, would you really be that chuffed considering all that's happened? But there we go. She to me, it never feels like she hits rock bottom. And one of the things that Rian Johnson said that he wanted to do, and I'm not quoting him directly because I can't remember the exact quote, but he said that he wanted all the characters to face their worst fear, or to do something that would really test them. And quite honestly, and that's darkness. And quite honestly, there doesn't seem to be any evidence that that's happening. Kylo Ren, okay, yes, he does get tested, but then he ends up becoming Supreme Leader, so that's kind of what he wanted, even though at the end of the film he's probably in some sort of conflict. He still ends up getting the ultimate prize, which he's Supreme Leader of the First Order. As I say, Rey is able to do Jedi mastery with the lightsaber, and she masters the Force. The only thing that concerns her is the fact that her parents are nobodies, but yet she then admits she knew that anyway. There are other characters in it that they never really... Poe, we already mentioned, didn't we? Poe was supposed to have hit rock bottom with the fact that he's killed all these people through his stupidity, but at the end of the film, he doesn't really seem to have been affected by that at all.
He certainly hasn't learnt from his mistake by the look of it. I mean, I will say that I'm going to defend Rey, and I never thought that would happen. I mean, she does fail. I think she fails quite miserably, and at the same time does face a darkest fear. Don't forget, I mean, her closeness with Han Solo, although that was a bit forced and sudden, but oh look, here's a father figure. I mean, in a slightly more mature movie, she'd be sleeping with him because he's a father figure. But yeah, but and then she saw Kylo kill Han Solo. That happened in front of her.
Yeah.
After she'd just bonded with this father type character. So her hatred and fear of Kylo Ren would be quite strong because of that. So she goes and faces him. So from that respect, I can see, yeah, she is actually facing her darkest fear. Although they had muted that themselves with the story writing by having, I think, too many of these connection scenes where they were talking to each other via space telephone or whatever.
Space Skype.
Yeah, space Skype. But so her facing him, I can see as being her greatest fear, and she failed because she went over there to bring him round to the light side, to basically bring him home, kind of thing, and she failed miserably because he ended up being the leader of the evil Empire, First Order.
but is it dark though? Is it that same degree that it should have its place as the darkest Star Wars of the entire saga?
Oh, this absolutely 100% not, and you're absolutely right. The humour You know, and again, there's one of these like space Skype, force Skype meeting things where, you know, he's got his top off. And it's, do you mind putting something? It's like, for God's sake, you know, it's just like pathetic.
I'd heard there was a quote from one of it wasn't, I don't think it's the director himself, it was one of the crew of The Last Jedi that said that the reason they put that scene in was so that the audience knew that she could actually see him, because she commented on the lack of attire. Now, okay, yeah, I can kind of see that, but at the same time it still feels as though they put it in to try and hint at this sexual tension that's between them.
I know we've had discussions off air about this quite a lot, haven't we? And you feel quite strongly that there is this sexual. I don't see it in the least. I've got to be honest. But here's the thing: in that, okay, if that's the reason for it, I'm still not buying it, because in the first time they have this connection, Kylo makes a statement about, I can't seem to see where you are. Which...
But he says, I can see you, doesn't he?
Well, it at very least, it alleges that he can... It infers that he can see her.
Yeah.
You know, it's like he's looking at her and then he's looking around, and I can't see where you are. So it's obvious that he can see her. Well, by process of elimination, she would say if she couldn't see him.
We'll go even further back. In the first time, I believe that they have the Force bond, she shoots him. Or she gets the gun out and shoots at something.
She shoots a big hole in the wall, yes. Because she thinks he's stood there.
The scene is him flinching as if he's been shot by a bullet. So, yeah, I'm a bit suspicious there, Disney.
Yeah. I think it was an excuse to get Adam Driver with his top off.
Which I am not complaining about completely. I have to say that it was one of the best bits of the film.
I would say that's fine, as long as we make it even and Daisy Ridley takes... No, actually, no. I don't want to see Daisy Ridley with her top off.
No.
More layers the better with her, I think. She's not an attractive girl. I don't think. She's not, no.
Really?
Yeah. Well, her mouth sort of extends around the back of her head.
Oh, hush, dude.
Well, it does. It kind of makes it look like it's going to like hinged lid. Anyway.
You liked Admiral Holdo, though, didn't you?
Yeah. I thought she was well, not as a character. I thought she was terribly written, but yeah, just kind of she had the glam thing going on. Yeah, the hair and the makeup. Moving on. So these flappy silly bird things that are now going to be plush toys everywhere you look.
The porgs.
Is that what they're called?
Yeah, the porgs.
Oh God, they're like. I mean, the Ewoks were bad enough.
Well, I'm surprised that they didn't put them in more, actually. I mean, obviously that was one of the reasons they were there, as you say, the selling of merchandise, but also that they were in the scenes where there was a little bit of humour injected in. But actually, I was surprised that they weren't in the film in more places. Speaking of being in the film, I was surprised that we didn't see more of Chewbacca. He seemed to have his brief shining moment at the beginning of the film, and then a little bit later on in the Millennium Falcon on Crate. But apart from that, he didn't really see old Chewie.
No, he was just the taxi driver.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's all he was there for, was just to, ferry her about. And R2-D2 was just sat there rusting in a corner.
I actually have heard a lot of people say, well, they've had their time, in reference to C-3PO and R2-D2, and I think to myself, well, okay, I know you have to make way for new characters and the new generation, but it still seems a little bit cheap to just put them in 2 minutes worth of film.
Yeah, 3PO, I don't know. I think they're getting the balance right with 3PO, because he's still there. He's still clearly displaying his character from the previous movies. and he's still around. It isn't focused on him, but he's still around, and I don't dislike that. I mean, I'm kind of amazed at myself saying this, because I think they also overdid 3PO way too much with the trilogies by, all of a sudden, oh look, it's Darth Vader who built him. Yeah, please. Anyway, we're not talking about the first trilogies, the first three. We're definitely not talking about those. That'd be a much longer podcast. So the humour, I felt personally way too much humour, nowhere near enough darkness.
Yeah.
Or even just serious moments. It doesn't have to be dark. It can just be an emotional moment. But, for some reason Disney's got to come in and insert jokes, It's like, I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so continuity with episode 7 then.
Yeah.
So I know you only really want to focus on episode 7, don't you?
Just for now, I think, because otherwise it would be a very, very long podcast.
Yeah, I agree.
So the reason for this, the reason for me mentioning this to you earlier, questions, lots and lots of questions. I know there are areas of the Star Wars fandom that said, well, you don't need to have an answer to every question that's posed, and to a point I agree with them. We didn't really have, say for example, much of the backstory on the Emperor in the original trilogy, just off the top of my head. But anyway, so things like where are the Knights of Ren? What happened to Phasma?
Well, I think they're keeping the door open for her to come back again.
Do you really think they'll bring her back?
Well, the last time they were supposed to have put her in a garbage chute, which I thought actually was quite dark in of itself, but I thought that's what they'd actually done.
But turns out that
the garbage compactor or whatever.
Yeah, well, she wouldn't have had very long to get out of it, would she? Before Starkiller Base blew. Anyway, that's a no, never mind. But yeah, other things like who is Snoke? Where did Snoke learn his abilities from? The whole manipulation of Ben Solo, which was mentioned. It was mentioned, but there wasn't really a huge amount of backstory as to how he sought Snoke out, or Snoke got hold of him, and then ultimately went on to train with Snoke.
Well, I know it's been revealed in a lot of the build-up for episode 7 about, Snoke was this... He's someone who's been around since before the original trilogy, and, but he's been sort of in the shadows. And all these little hints that there's something really big about his past. And we get nothing. I mean, nothing. Not even a hint. And now he's dead. Well, they're not going to revisit that, because what would be the point? And
well, I can't see how they can.
I feel utterly cheated. So Snoke was supposed to be painted as this more evil than Darth Vader and the Emperor put together, and more powerful than any other Jedi we've ever seen. Which great, fine, fantastic, but to just leave you with absolutely nothing is
for someone.
It's a big fuck you. It
well,
is.
Also for someone supposedly so powerful that can't notice a little lightsaber rumbling on the chair, the arm of the chair beside him. For me, that was very convenient.
Well, he even says, I can feel the resolution in your mind. Oh, right, you can't feel who it's directed at then. And I remember thinking that, watching it, I'm thinking, you really, it's obvious that he's going to side with Rey, and you haven't noticed this. That's a bit, even reading body language, you can tell.
I know.
And I'm not a Force adept, or maybe I am.
But yeah, so continuity, I think, was a little bit of an issue, but the thing with it is, and I don't know if this is specifically a J.J. Abrams trait, because I know that he got a lot of flack for Lost, and he has this thing that he does with his films, whereby he opens up possibilities. Maybe you want to call it the mystery box, let's say. You know, he always has a mystery box in his films where he begs questions of the audience, or he does things that makes you think, oh, maybe I should be paying more attention to this. So say, for example, the whole thing around Rey's parents. I'll come back to Snoke in a minute, but, you know, the whole thing around Rey's parents. In The Force Awakens, we were given so many little hints and nods that she might be related to someone. When it got to The Last Jedi, and I was sort of thinking to myself, well, maybe there is something, and we're going to get it revealed to us, and it's going to be very satisfying. And then it's revealed that she's nothing. She's from nobody. Now, I personally don't mind that. I don't mind the fact that she's not related to a Skywalker or a Kenobi, or we don't know, because maybe something will pop back up again in Episode 9. Who knows? But
I'd be very annoyed if it does.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, let's just take it at face value. We've been told that she's nobody, and it's almost as if the way it's said, that's it, don't ask about it anymore. That's an end no. Even herself, she says, I'm from nothing. You know, she acknowledges she's a nobody. So basically, you've got 2 years worth of fan theories and speculation that has just been ended like that. You sort of you think to yourself, well, why were we given little teasers and hints in The Force Awakens then, if it was always going to come down to this? Similarly with Snoke, you know, like you quite rightly pointed out, where does he come from, and who is he, and how does he fit into the universe?
I think Snoke's a different kettle of fish there, in that we've had lots of sort of through interviews and, you know, off-screen. We've had a lot of off-screen hints that, you know, he is somebody special. We've never had anything like that with Rey, though, and I'm quite pleased to know that she does come from nobody, because you know, if she was a Skywalker, a Kenobi, a Palpatine, or whatever, you know, it'd be like, right, is there like only one genealogy line that's actually Force adept then? You know,
no, absolutely.
And it would feel like the universe is too big for it to just be somebody we've already met in that respect. So I thought actually with Rey that was the right thing. I thought the way in which they revealed it was in such an offhand, casual manner that was a bit. Well, hang on, no. If you'd have had her go on some journey and discover that was the answer, that would have been different. That would have been a proper reveal. But there was no reveal. It was just a conversation piece.
Yeah.
And that's where I feel it went wrong. Snoke, no, different matter. Snoke, we should have known about Snoke.
Yeah. No, and as I say, I don't have any problem with her being nobody. I'm just saying that it's just acknowledging the fact that something was put in place in The Force Awakens which prompted the fans, or, you know, even some members of the general audience to go, oh, right, well, does that mean we should be expecting something? And then that expectation didn't happen. That was just my main point. But just very, very quickly, the one continuity point that I felt really, really failed, and forgive me, I know I said that I wouldn't go into the original trilogy, but I suppose I will go slightly, is what happened with Luke. Luke's whole sort of backstory, the fact that he'd gone looking for the first Jedi Temple, and also he'd done something very, very wrong, and or it was implied anyway that the fall of his nephew had upset him so much that he'd gone off to be exiled. So, you know, coming into that, and you're thinking, wow, okay, so what happened? You know, was there this major thing that happened between Ben Solo and Luke? And yeah, something did happen, but it's revealed that Luke has a moment of weakness and decides that he is going to kill his nephew, who at this point, may I just point out, has not turned fully dark side yet.
I'm laughing at this because absolutely, what utter tosh.
Well, it's an insult, quite frankly. You can't tell me that the guy who believed in his father, who was supposedly one of the most evilest Sith, beg your pardon, in the entire galaxy, and no one was going to give him a chance of being redeemed, but his son, Luke Skywalker, believed in him so much that he went and fought the Emperor to try and save his father's soul. You mean to tell me that he does all that and then decides one day that, no, I'm going to kill my nephew because he's displaying some sort of worrying tendencies, and let's nip that in the bud pretty quick.
I mean, if ever there was a time for Yoda to turn up and have a word with Luke, perhaps that was it. Say, I know what you've been thinking, because, like, I can control weather and shit, so I mustn't be able to know what you're thinking at any given moment. And, like, killing children, not really, your dad went that way.
Well, it's just the fact that, to be fair to Luke, he's already had his character arc. So why do you feel the need to give him another one in this? Or why? Sorry, I should rephrase that. Why do you feel the need to make him overcome what he's already overcome?
To be fair, I don't think it was for Luke's purposes. I agree with that. That was a terribly written moment. But I think it was to get us on side with Kylo.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. You need a foil, don't you? Because after killing Han Solo, you're going to have a lot of angry people in the fandom who want to know why on earth he should be redeemed.
But if you're going to if you're not going to just dismiss the scene as tosh, as certainly I do, and I think you lean that way as well. If you're not going to do that, if you're going to side with anyone by now, it's going to be Luke, and it's going to be, oh my God, is Kylo that evil that Luke feels the need to remove him from the universe? If you are going to buy into that scene, you're going to side with Luke.
Well, I think I said to you, didn't I, a little while back, so I'll mention it now, about what would have made a better alternative backstory. The fact that in Force Awakens we're presented with Kylo having these temper tantrums. Well, obviously they're bursts of him trying to control his temper and ultimately failing because he's so powerful. What would have, I think, made a much better backstory, which would have also been in keeping with the canon, the books that have come out, where it's kept from Kylo, or kept from Ben Solo, that he's related to Darth Vader, obviously for fear of repercussions. Mm-hmm. And he finds out that his parents don't tell him, and Luke certainly doesn't tell him, and he finds out, and obviously that destroys a lot of trust that he has in his family. So why couldn't you have done something in The Last Jedi whereby he finds out this information, he has an uncontrollable burst of power, of rage, because he can't contain it, ultimately ends up killing students at the temple in the process, and he feels as though he can't, I can't obviously go back now because I've done some horrible, evil things. Meanwhile, he's got Snoke in his mind telling him that nobody loves him and everyone's frightened of him. And then so he decides, right, well, if that's the case, then I'm better off with Snoke, and off he pops, which leaves Luke upset because obviously he's now got a whole bunch of dead students in his Jedi temple. And he's also remorseful that he could have stepped in and he could have said something to his nephew, and he could have comforted him. He could have told him the truth and been there for him. And I think that would have been just as believable without damaging Luke's character. It obviously would have made him, almost like his decision-making would have been poor, but it wouldn't have made him look strange, the fact that he wanted to murder his nephew.
That's exactly. It's much more believable because, he'd been attempting to do the right thing.
Exactly. Yes. By trying to do the right thing, he ultimately
does
made
the wrong
a
thing,
mistake,
but
and a mistake that cost him dearly.
and that, as you say, that is so much more believable and acceptable.
I think it is. Yeah.
No, I agree with you. Now, so before we move on to what we think might be coming next, I think there are a couple of perhaps honourable mention moments in this movie that we haven't covered that I don't think we're quite going to have time to go into. But floating Leia, Archangel Leia, no.
Yeah.
No. Seriously, no. Like, fucking hell, Disney, what were you thinking? And the bit with Finn heading towards the battering ram cannon. I mean, who's naming these things? Seriously. You know, I mean, so much wrong with that particular scene. You know, he's heading in a right. So they've picked off all these other speeder car thingies. God knows what they're supposed to be. As they're weaving about, he's heading in a straight line, and they can't pick him off.
Or they don't even attempt to. Yeah. Sort of.
You know.
Afterwards, I mean, sorry, that I should have clarified. Yeah, they don't even attempt to shoot him afterwards after he's been saved by Rose, and they're both just.
And that, oh my God, like so much wrong with that. So Rose has just met this guy a couple of times and now she's like madly in love with him to the point that she's happy to kill all her friends that her sister, that she's so remorseful about, died to save. She's now willing to kill them for, it's just like really badly written. And I have to say, the whole thing about Luke, when he walked out and he got shot, the moment he walked outside from the rebel base towards the end, I called it. I knew he wasn't really there.
Yeah. No,
no red footprints.
Well, exactly, yeah. I was going to say, I double-checked with that scene again. There's no footprints. He obviously looks younger. His hair is darker. He has his blue lightsaber. That was the biggest tell for me. He's got the blue lightsaber.
I never spotted that.
Had been previously destroyed.
Yeah, I never spotted that.
No, I'd noticed that, and I thought, oh, well, surely if I've noticed that, and others will, and Kylo must obviously notice that, but nope. I suppose you could argue that he's so much in red mist that he can't, literally and figuratively, that he can't see what's there in front of him. But
well, Luke had a real strong emotional connection to that lightsaber that his father killed lots of children with.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Lest we forget. And hand shot first. So moving on to what we think. I mean, assuming we're not talking about the Han Solo movie. Is it going? Are we going to call that the Han Solo movie, or are we calling it the Han Solo movie, or what are we calling it? I know its working title is Red Cup, but
yeah, it's well, I quite like the play on the Han Solo, so it's the Solo movie. For me, anyway.
Yes. Do you think? I've just got to ask. Do you think Harrison Ford ever talks about when he had the hand job? Moving on. Anyway. Sorry, I just had to throw that one out there.
Yeah, take up a point.
So episode 9 then. What do you think's coming?
Well, I think we're going to need some kind of redemption arc. I mean, I think they've gone to the point now where it looks likely they could for Kylo Ren, I should say. It looks as though it's going to happen because there is still there's still hope for him, I suppose. I know they don't make it very, very clear at the end of the film, but he's obviously regretting what he's done at the end of the film. So I think there will be some sort of redemption arc that I imagine Rey will be a part of, in order to help coax him back to the light.
I hope not. I hope they break the mould Because Darth Vader was redeemed at the end, and as we know. But I'm hoping it goes the distance and he digs his heels in and has to be executed.
I don't think it'll happen though, Stu. I mean, I know what you mean. If it was any other franchise, then you could probably argue yes, that might make it very interesting. But it's Star Wars, and the crux of Star Wars has always been it's about hope, which got mentioned quite a lot in the film, incidentally,
God, yeah.
just to keep reminding us. But it's true. It is ultimately about hope. So I don't think that Lucasfilm or Disney will do anything rash. I think they will do something that ends on a positive note.
But how many people has he killed now? I mean, that's rhetorical because it's a lot, as we know. But,
well, yeah, but then
at what point is he going to be punished for that?
Well, possibly.
I mean, well, looking at Return of the Jedi as a map there, I mean, Darth did repent just before he died, so maybe we'll get a similar thing from Ren. It'll be a deathbed, presto changeo. Oh no, I'm on the light side now.
Well, this is the cynical me coming out now, but I do think there is some grain of truth to it. The cynical me says you need to have a continuation of the Star Wars films, and if they are going to continue them with the Skywalker line, or indeed the Solos, then Kylo at some point is going to have to reproduce. So he's going to have kids that spawn their own legacy. So the cynical side of me says, well, they'll keep him alive for that reason, and so that we'll end up having films of the future. But who knows? I suppose it's.
I can see what you're saying. I mean, so far, all 8 of the movies have been Skywalker focused. However, they're also, by introducing these spin-off movies, they're setting us up for, expectation of lots of spin-off movies. I mean, what about C-3PO and R2-D2 standalone movie? That's never been done. Droids the animation series. Do you remember that? My God.
Yeah. No, I just think that they've got the problem whereby if they kill him at the end of Episode 9, you'll get people coming out saying, well, it's a rehash of Return of the Jedi. So they can't win either way. But I would like to think that they're going to do something that's a bit more hopeful and to actually save him rather than just kill him off. But that's just me.
I'm struggling with that one. I mean, people came out of Episode 7 and said, it's a rehash of A New Hope, and they were right. And they've come out of this one saying it's a rehash of Empire, and they're right. Yeah, I think the next one is just going to be a rehash of Jedi.
Well, I guess
I really do. And one of the issues I see with Kylo is because he has done so much evil and hurt so many people, that if they redeem him, if he, he will turn to the, he'll turn good in the end. Of course he will. But if they let him live, how would he pay for those crimes?
Well, as I say, maybe it's something that they will explore. That would be different, wouldn't it? Having someone be imprisoned or on trial, or I don't know.
It'd be very nice if they came up with a creative answer to that. And it's cynical me, but I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing it. I think these last two have been all about making the money and not about creativity. It's quite sad to say, really.
It is, but it is something that has been lacking, I think, in The Last Jedi. But just on the subject of what next, the two main things for me, last sort of 2 points for me, what they're going to do about Leia was the biggest resolution, mainly because of what happened to Carrie Fisher. Episode 9, Mark Hamill went on record and said that it was meant to be her film, which I think makes it even sadder because she obviously never lived to be able to do it. So indeed, what are they going to do with Leia is one for me. And then the last point for my what next is Luke. Will he come back as a Force ghost, or will it be a case of, well, that's it, Luke's had his time, and we leave it up to you now, kids. Off you go.
I mean, I think we will see him, albeit in a cameo role and alongside Yoda. You know, that's one of the reasons I think that Yoda was shoehorned into this one as a Force ghost, is because we'll see him at the end of it all. You know, in the same way you had the lineup on Return of the Jedi, which is ruined by putting Hayden Christian in. Anyway,
poor old Hayden. He gets such a, you know.
Some would say deservedly so.
I have to admit, with the hate that I've seen hanging around the fandom since The Last Jedi came out, there is a part of me that, even though I'm not a fan of it, I have to say that I've not liked how bitter and twisted some people can be, especially towards actual actors. And you know, I'd like to remind people that it is just fictional, and anyone that hates on Hayden Christensen or Mark Hamill or any of the others who dare to give a portrayal of a character is uncalled for, and it's not on. So yeah, if there is some hate directed towards Hayden, then really no, it's not his fault. He was given a role, and that was how he was told to play it. And if people don't like it, well, tough.
Well said. Well said. And let's face it, Luke was an incredibly whiny bitch in the first one. He was.
Didn't he do it well?
Yeah. Seems like I'm going nowhere. Yeah.
I was going to go into Tashi Station to pick up some power converters.
You can always go, oh, but Mum.
I know.
Anyway.
Go drink your milk, Luke.
Blue milk. Yes. That's been milked. Oh, yes. No. Luke and milk. No. Oh.
Sorry.
On that lovely mental image, then, I think thank you very much for this. Thank you all for listening. I mean, whatever happens, I'm going to be going to see episode 9.
Yeah. I think we're all resolved, don't we?
It's still well. I mean, you do get people hating it. I know in the Star Wars world saying, Star Trek world saying, oh, you know, Discovery, it's not real Star Trek. Of course, it's real Star Trek. It's called Star Trek Discovery. You know, that makes it real Star Trek. And then in the same way with this, you know, it's a Star Wars film. You know, someone does get his hand cut off, albeit Snoke, and you have to look very carefully for that. So that makes it a Star Wars film.
Absolutely.
But did anyone say...
I've got a bad feeling about this.
Yeah. Did anyone say it?
Now you mention it, I don't think they did.
Oh.
Well, not that I remember, anyway. Yeah, not that I remember.
Well, we need to do some research on this, because then
I think we do.
it might not be a Star Wars film after all.
Oh,
Ooh.
controversial.
And on that bombshell, as Alan Partridge used to say, we shall leave it there. Thank you very much for listening. And don't forget to tune in to our next regular episode, where we will be discussing canon and who decides canon. And in the meantime, may the Force be with you.